I've been a part of a couple of different survival shows, and I can tell you that is the safest I've ever been when I've been in the bush. There's a camera crew, there's a medical team, there's a production. It's very safe.
Welcome back to Under Oath. Today we're talking to Marine Corps veteran, author, and survivalist Donny Dust. Donny, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, I thought I had a cool background. I really did. I really think I got some nerdy stuff. I got some geek stuff behind me, but God, you just whooped my ass today. Jeez.
This is a lifetime of hunting and fishing, and we call it the menu. Like everything you see on here, what could be on dinner, that night. So
yeah. Well, before I did this, I was an Army veteran a long time ago, and I remember going to Panama. I was in it was jungle school in Panama, and they took us through this like little zoo and showed us all the things we could eat if we had to.
I like it.
So
that's the way to do it right there.
So I assume that's now a lot of people, they watch your TikTok videos, they watch everything. You start off in the military. How do you go from were you a hunter or anything else before you entered the military, or did those skills just come, from training?
Yeah, I think, an origin story, if you will, is like most kids, when we were younger. I'm 40, I'm going to be turning 45 here pretty soon. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have all this social media stuff. And for us, we spent a lot of time outside. And more importantly, when we were in trouble, we had to go inside. And so unfortunately, I was inside quite a bit. But the point is that was a time when you fished and you explored the world. You built forts with your buddies. And as I grew up, I kind of wanted to continue that process. The Marine Corps gave me that foundation of dealing with adversity and painting like even your worst picture, your worst scenario, your worst day is just your worst day. You have to adapt and overcome. And after, a couple deployments, downrange and combat zones, I wanted to get out and I wanted to really just be there for my sons. But I needed to focus on me and what I could do to provide them the best life. And that was creating a business, creating a lifestyle that would give them great autonomy and freedom to explore the world. More importantly, that would allow me to find a peace and kind of a success. Like my oldest boy leaves for Europe and Africa and all these different countries. He just turned 18. He's going to go backpack and just explore the world. So for us, we kind of have that drive of you should follow your passions and turn them into something that you can ultimately live from. But the Marine Corps was a huge foundation. It gave me a lot of room to kind of play and understanding on who I am, my capabilities, as well as my limitations.
Now you have a new book out, and it deals with surviving and everything else like that. And I'm sure it deals with also, how you deal with personal issues too. So why don't you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah. So Wild Wisdom is a book that I wrote for everybody. And the idea is to kind of rewild them back to those kind of early, maybe youthful days, or even kind of that in historical side. We all come from the natural environment. And in there, I kind of give a little bit about who I am, kind of my methodologies, my approaches, and why the natural world is so important. And as we kind of discover this natural world, or we rewild into that natural world, we should understand some of the hazards that do exist and some of the necessary knowledge, skills, and abilities that would allow us to survive out there, whether it was short term for 72 hours because you twisted an ankle, or for long term if you wanted to live out there for, let's say, 6 months to a year. So the idea is to give people a foundation to start working from, for them to kind of build into their curiosity about the natural world so they can start to explore. They can start to see the beauty behind it, like the food it provides, the resources that it holds, and kind of that curiosity that it will always present to you. Because you and I could walk down the same trail. You could look left, I could look right. Something over there on the right could catch my eye, and I can go and explore it, and it's a whole new discovery for me.
How hard is it? A lot of people, they don't pay attention to their own mortality. They don't believe that we're limited. And normally it takes like a horrible moment in their life to wake them up and to go, hey, listen, I need to live for tomorrow because, like I said, I might be gone in a year. A lot of people do that. For example, my partner had a heart issue a couple years ago and he almost died, and he's the most healthy person and he looked at me and I'm not the most healthy person. He goes, how is this not you?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you just, how do you explain that to people? Say, listen, get out there, pay attention.
Well, it's the same thing for me. When I was 37, I had a massive heart attack that almost killed me. Not because I did drugs or I, smoked cigarettes or drank alcohol. It was just genetics. It crept up, tried to grab a hold of me and bring me down. But it was the lifestyle that I had of health and fitness and the natural environment by being out there and exploring that allowed me to, one, overcome that heart attack, and two, ultimately use it as my means of healing. But I don't like to say that life is short. I like to say that life is long because it's all about our mentality and how we approach the world in front of us. If we believe that it's short, we're in a rush. We're in a hurry to do everything as quick as we can and not really take a moment to enjoy it. For me, I like to say life is long. And with it being long, we don't know what the future holds. So when something is presented to you, a great sunset, a new relationship, or even maybe an amazing movie, you should sit there and enjoy it for what it is. Don't be in a rush to do the next thing. Take the times to enjoy what is present because I know as somebody at 37, when I had my heart attack, it's very likely I'll probably have one again and I'll kick the bucket. I'm not worried about it because I know right now I'm talking to you. And when I'm done here, I'm going to go kiss my fiance. I'll pick my boys up from school and I'll go hunting later on this week. But I know those things are slowly kind of in their present and I'm not in a rush to get through anything. I'm just taking it as it is.
One of the things I like to talk about people from different backgrounds, I like to say how they deal with things. How do you get out of a funk when something's really bothering you, when something's depressing you, when there's something you can't do something about, and you go, listen, I got to let this go. I'm angry. I got to dump
Yeah.
this. What do you do to dump hostility and things like that?
Yeah. I think for me, if I have that hostility or that mindset that something is just kind of lingering in there, is one, I have a cognitive process. One, I acknowledge that it exists. And then from that existence, I know the necessary steps to remove it. And for me, it is kind of getting into that flow state. And that flow state is maybe going hiking or fishing or flint napping, but I'm completely removing that mentality or that thought from my brain by hyper focusing on something else. Maybe it's cooking a cake. I mean, you could pick any scenario, but you get into that flow state where your mind is completely focused on what that task at hand is. And that thing that was kind of lingering there slowly fades out. And soon as you're done, if that thing kind of comes back into your mind, you pick up another activity. But at least you can acknowledge for the 2 hours it took me to bake a cake or the 4 hours I went fishing, it didn't exist. So if it doesn't exist then, why would I let it exist now? And then it's really easy to just remove it out. That's, a way, not necessarily the way, but for me, it's all about getting into that flow state and eliminating those thoughts from even existing.
Over the last couple of years, there have been a lot of survivalist shows, whether it be Bear Grissom or, people out in the woods, people jumping into ponds. They're showing you how to survive. How much do you think shock factor gets people interested in what you do?
Yeah, I think those survival shows they portray a lot of accuracy, and then sometimes there's some TV to them. They're trying to capture an audience through kind of these obscure moments or these crazy sort of situations, but it's different from actually going and living. I mean, I've been a part of a couple of different survival shows, and I can tell you that is the safest I've ever been when I've been in the bush. There's a camera crew, there's a medical team, there's a production. It's very safe. So you're willing to take a little bit bigger chance in the event that something happens. But I know if I'm living in a cave for 2 months and it's just me and the nearest town is 35 miles away and it's a long walk to the nearest road, I'm taking it slow. I'm thinking methodical. Everything has purpose. Every calorie counts. So there's a big difference between the TV as well as what it is if you were to actually do it by yourself if you were alone.
The strange thing when I see some of these shows where they take regular people and they put them into like Naked and Afraid, for example, and they go Naked and Afraid 30 days, and then they go, we're going to do 90 days. And you can see the huge difference between 30 and 90. You could starve yourself for 30 days, but you can't starve yourself for 90.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in those survival situations, shelter, fire, food, water, all of those kind of ebb and flow as far as importance. If you're in a snowy environment or a desert environment, you're more likely to die from exposure from the extreme cold and the extreme heat. Fire is a tool. It can boil water. It can shape wood. It can cook meat. So it's kind of like you have to take every environment as the situation that you need to kind of go between, all right, do I need to focus more on my shelter? Do I need to focus more on getting water first because it's extremely hot? but the food is really what keeps you going. That is your fuel. And I've been on those shows and I've been remote on my own. And if you're not taking food, you're a lump of potatoes. You're just there. I mean, yes, you can survive, you can live for, up to like 3 weeks, probably even 4 weeks without food, but you're not functioning. You're not up and mobile and cheery, being like, good morning, everyone. You are laying down, barely moving. You're still functioning, bodily functions, but you're not going to make it into the long term because you're not taking in any calories. So when you see these shows that are 90 days, you're like, they are taking in a form of food. They might not film it all or show it all, or maybe them catching a fish, but they are taking in food because it's very hard staying over a long period of time. And I mean, a long period of time with no caloric intake.
I had my own military experiences a long time ago. For walk the deserts, I've done the dumb things, but lived in the jungle, crazy crap like that. I try to tell people, they go, what allows you to do something like that? And I said, it's all mental.
Yeah.
You have to be locked down. You have to change who you are. Whoever you are outside, at home or something else, the minute there's a seriousness that takes over when you enter these environments.
Absolutely.
And how do you teach that to somebody?
Yeah, I think one, for guys like you and I, the military is always kind of it's helped us deal with that mental adversity. So how do you take that and portray it onto somebody else's? You have to set them up for their best case scenario. So, for example, what would you bring on a day hike? I would bring this. I would bring these 5 items. Great. Let's go out for a day hike, and I'm going to remove 4 of them. And you get 1 of them. Maybe it's your bottle of water or your extra pair of socks. But as an instructor of survival, I like to create the best case scenario. And then I like to start to take that scenario and break it down into reality. It's very unlikely you're going to find yourself naked out in the bush, but you will find yourself on a hike, potentially with a twisted ankle or somewhat lost. So you create a realism around those sort of things. And what that does, it starts to build up that little bit of mental conditioning into dealing with adversity. It's still safe and controlled because I'm there, I'm implementing this sort of chaos or adversity. But if they ever were to find themselves in that experience where I'm not there and it's actually happened, they have something to go back on. What they have is a ground truth. And that ground truth gives them the opportunity to say, all right, I remember going through this class with Donny, and he said, if you ever twist your ankle, do X, Y, and Z. Stay calm, stay focused, and try to get yourself to a safe location if you are exposed or if rain's coming, and then try to signal for help or apply some sort of self-personal aid. If you can build a ground truth, if you can build a kind of a cache of information and experiences for a client, then they have the necessary sort of mindset going forward. Because it's the same thing when we joined the military. We didn't know what we were doing, but through boot camp and through training and through constant evolution and exposure to these things, did we start to build our little toolbox of, I know it's raining. I'm going to put my poncho liner on, keep my rifle dry. It's not the end of the world. We had the ability to fall back on that. So in my classes, I like to expose people to that in small little increments so they start to build up their own ground truth, ultimately allowing their adaptability to really kind of flourish.
You just brought up something that I have to ask this question.
Yes, sir.
I don't have a to-go bag prepared. I get 5 minutes. And I got to head into the woods for who knows how long. What do I put in my bag at a minimum? What do I try to put away? And I get 5 minutes to do it.
You got 5 minutes?
I get 5 minutes.
Well, and do you have a truck?
No, the woods is right there. I'm running.
You're running into the woods. I would definitely go with some form of shelter, even something as simple as a tarp that will give you a solid barrier from elements, rain, snow, something to that extent. I would give you a means of a cutting tool, whether it was an axe, a good knife, a saw, a blade, a means of processing water, a pure water, water filtration system, or even a steel pot to boil water. And then I would pack medical. That's cuts, abrasions, lacerations, any of that small stuff, in a form of food. And when that's means of you getting food or a form of food that you could bring with you with a couple of MREs. But if you can address those, because you have to think survival is just getting by. You're just getting by, hand to mouth. Thriving is when you can start to move into that leisure. Maybe you build a drum, or you can sit and take a nap for a couple hours because you got everything addressed. So in that case where you got to go, 5 items real quick, shelter, water, a form of fire, a cutting tool, and then an aspect of food that will get you started and keep you alive, just getting by for a couple days until you can start to use your creative process and say, all right, I need more food. I need to build a better wall around my shelter because the wind's blowing in. But that would set you off on the right foot.
Now you mentioned this, and I know you probably take a lot of people out. Somebody you go on these trips with people. What is the when you have to tell people, no, we're not bringing that. Take that out of your bag. What is the
Yeah.
biggest thing that people that they bring that they think they're going to need that you go, we don't need this?
Oh my God. I mean, there's so many, but sometimes people like to bring like throwing knives. Like they've seen too many movies, like we're going to be battling bears. I mean, they bring huge like amounts of food, and I'm like, there's nothing wrong with that, but you're gonna have to carry it. I always try to get people to bring what I call the core four. That's a blade of some type. That could be an axe, it can be a knife, a blanket or barrier, which can be a tarp, a wool blanket, a sleeping bag, a bottle, which a single walled metal water bottle allows you to carry water and boil water, and then an aspect of a burn, and that's a fire making aid. So a lighter, a ferro rod, some dry tinder. Those are typically four of the hardest things to replicate in the natural environment. So you can kind of give yourself an advantage by bringing those that will kind of speed up processes. But if people are bringing like a huge canvas tent or like three axes, a machete, and like two knives, I'm like, I like where your head's at, but we're going out for just 10 days. We're going to be okay without, all of this. And the best part is when we're walking back, they quickly realize like, I wouldn't have resourced or needed any of that stuff. I would have used this one stone flake for 5 days and then shaped it into an arrow point for the remainder of the 5 days. Like nature will provide everything you need. You just have to go about resourcing it, really.
Now, you have a lot of people who might romanticize being out in the woods and everything else like that. And then you
Yeah.
go out there and they realize, no, this is going to be hard.
Yeah.
How do you change somebody? Go, hey, listen, I know you thought this, but how do you bring somebody into your environment and get them comfortable with it?
Yeah, I think the first thing is really tell them like I'm all about managing expectations. I tell them right up front, you will be cold, you will be hungry, you will be dehydrated, you will be all of these things. But it's our kind of our goal is to make those things better. So if you slept a horrible night of sleep last night and now it's day two, what can you do to make it better? Is it adding more leaves? Is it building more pine boughs underneath you? So I want people to start to understand the problem solving that they have within them to kind of build upon their kind of skill set. If they were sitting in the hot exposed sun all day, when they could sit in the shade, they're learning. And I think people need the exposure to it to ultimately kind of fully grasp, because they think they see stuff in movies and on TV, but a lot of people that go on TV, they're seasoned experts. They're seasoned in these sort of experiences. But if you don't introduce them slowly and you don't give them these little opportunities to kind of gain their own personal perspective and knowledge, then they can wind up learning the hard way. They could go out and say, I'm going to go out for 10 days by myself and I'm bringing these 5 or 6 things. And then they get out there and they realize, well, I've bit off more than I could chew. And that little training survival scenario turns into a real scenario. And they're down on water, they're sore, they're bruised, they're battered. And, they wind up calling a search and rescue team if that's the case, or someone notifies them that, hey, my loved one hasn't returned. Go find them. I mean, it can happen like that.
Well, we've got about a minute left. Why don't you tell
Yes,
us
sir.
where we can get your books, how we can find you online, your social media, so that
Yes, sir.
everyone can get out and get more of these pieces of wild wisdom?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, everyone and anybody can go to donnydust.com. And that is my site. On there, I have all the books that I've written, my current book, Wild Wisdom, all the TV and movie stuff that I'm affiliated with, or movies that are coming out, different online survival training opportunities that I offer through Survival Mastery. Social media, I mean, whether it's Instagram or TikTok, it's just Donny Dust. You search it, you'll see me. And on YouTube, it's Donny Dust Paleo Tracks. And on my YouTube, it's all about really doing more with less, all stone tools, primitive skills. It's a great time. But yeah, donnydust.com is the place to go to pick up the latest book and really find out what's going on in my life.
Well, it's great talking to you, and you keep living your best life, my friend.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your service very much so. And we'll see you out there.